to talk about this, but I'll do a little bit of it, okay? Okay, so last week, what did we talk about? What was the scripture? Acts.
16.
Close. Acts 17 and 6. Thank you. Very good. This is what I do whenever I'm teaching. One of my classes never answers me, so I always wait, and then I say, yes, you're correct, it is, and I tell them the right answer. So yeah, that's my teaching trick. Anyway, so Acts 17:6 says, not finding them there, they dragged out Jason and some of the other believers instead and took them before the city council. Paul and Silas have caused trouble all over the world, they shouted, and now they are here disturbing our city too. And the one that I like the most says, but when they did not find them, they dragged Jason and some brethren to the rulers of the city, crying out, these who have turned the world upside down have come here too. And I just like it because it sounds more dramatic, right? So NLT, these who have caused trouble, but this one says, these people have turned the world upside down. That's a lot of trouble. So we talked about how we're called to be like Paul and Silas, right? We're supposed to go out into the world and tell everyone about Jesus. We're supposed to not be afraid of failing while we're telling everybody about Jesus. And we're supposed to not be afraid of looking stupid, though that's really hard sometimes. I'm always worried about that. We're also not supposed to think it's our job to get people to believe us. That was the big point. So we're supposed to tell people about Jesus, and we're supposed to live our lives like Jesus wants us to live our lives, and we're supposed to go everywhere and see everyone and tell everyone about Jesus, but we're supposed to also know that it's not our job to make them believe us, right? We talked about how sometimes we get hung up on that part. We get hung up on the keeping people in church and keeping people Christians thing when it's really not our job. So we talked about all of that. And if we know how an Acts 17:6 ministry might look, next we need to look at how to implement it into our lives. And it all starts with our faith. So as we see with Paul and Silas in every single story, a big call requires a lot of faith. Paul and Silas were called to be global missionaries for Jesus, and that calling required them to have a lot of faith in a lot of situations that looked pretty dire, that looked pretty scary and dangerous and doomed. Like we talked about last week, they were in prison a lot. They were beaten and kicked out of towns a lot. I think if I were beaten and or talked to in a mean way or looked at sideways, I might quit, to be honest. But I'm not as strong as Paul and Silas. I'm not as strong as Paul and Silas. I don't know if I could be thrown into prison after being severely whipped, the Bible says severely whipped, and then say, okay, well, what song you want to sing tonight? Silas? It's your turn to lead. What song are we singing? That's like, I can't even imagine that. My faith is not there yet. I hope I never have to be put in that situation. But either way, my faith is not there yet. So this morning, okay, I got 2 minutes, okay. This morning I was watching a Stephen Furtick message. You guys know I love Stephen Furtick. It was called Trapped in Transition. And about like 2 minutes in, he literally said the words, turn the world upside down. Talking about how we're supposed to turn the world upside down, and I was like, okay, interesting. This is interesting. Because that's what sticks out to me the most in that scripture. And that's what I want to do. And that's what I think we should all want to do. His message also gave me another insight into our situation as a church, kind of, as a youth group, and just as the individuals who are sitting here, just as people. I think we're trapped in our transition right now. I think we're stuck in this time where we know we should be doing XYZ. We have these great ideas. We want to do great things, but we feel like we don't have the time or the resources. And I find myself thinking all the time, when we get in our new building, when we get new people, when we blah, 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 when we have all these things, then we'll be as successful as we want to be. But that's not necessarily true. There are some things that we can't do here. Like, we can't do some things here just because, lack of space. Our building is falling down. We can't really do a lot of things. But we can't just sit here and say, maybe someday, or when we get there, we'll do this. Something else that Stephen Furtick said that reminded me of our church is, change happens in an instant, but transformation is a process. We're constantly looking for change when we should be focusing on the process of the transition we're already going through. So this process is changing our minds and turning us toward where we need to be, but sometimes it can feel like a trap because sometimes it feels like it's going so slow. Sometimes it feels like it's slow motion and one of those dreams where you're trying to run and your body is really heavy. Sometimes it feels like that. It's like, I can see where I want to go, but I can't get there because all these things are in my way. And sometimes it just feels like you're running and going nowhere, and that's exhausting. It's discouraging sometimes. It is. So here's the difference, and this is the last thing I'm going to say. Paul, as in Paul and Silas, was changed in an instant. He went from being a killer of Christians, and he was on the road, and he was just going to keep doing what he was doing, and then in an instant, God blinded him, and he never went back to killing Christians. He turned to God and God only. And the Bible doesn't talk about, him going back and saying, okay, well, is this right for me? Should I keep doing this? I don't know if I should follow God. No, he was changed in an instantly, and started following God. But then, what about Peter? Peter was going through a transition throughout every story in the Bible that's about him. Peter was called in an instant, and his life was changed in an instant, but what about his mindset? Did he instantly become somebody different? Did he instantly decide, this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to leave every single thing behind? He did with his life. He followed Jesus instantly, but his mind had to go through a transition. It was a process. If you read stories about him, I think you could agree with me on that. For example, he cut off a guy's ear. I don't know, that seems a little violent. I don't know what I would do. But Peter's faith wasn't instant. Peter's faith had to go through a transition. What happened when he walked on the water? Clearly he had enough faith to step out, right? He had enough faith to take some steps. But then he second-guessed himself, and he got scared, and he wasn't really sure about it anymore, and he started to sink. It's a process. And sometimes we want the end product right now. But I think what we're learning as we're stuck here, stationed here, is this whole thing is a process. We can't snap our fingers and have a new building and have teams that work fluently together so we can do all of these things. We can't snap our fingers and be able to afford a full-time staff so we could keep the church running as smoothly as possible and do amazing and great things. We can't do that right now. We're in a process of transition. So, I have to stop. But, so Acts 17:6 ministry, we're called to go out and change the world. We're called to go out and tell everybody about Jesus, but we have to know that sometimes it's not instant. Sometimes we're going to be stuck in a transition, and I feel like we are right now. But we need to learn how to still do what we need to do in our transition. We need to change our mindset. We're not stuck. We're stationed here for an amount of time, and there's something that we need to do. There's a reason that we haven't moved to our building yet. There's a reason for everything. And I don't know. I want you guys this week if you can, if you're having a down moment thinking, why can't I go forward? What is happening? Instead of having that mindset, think, what am I supposed to be doing right now? Why am I here right now? Why is this happening around me right now, and what can I do? Because that's what I'm trying to do. And sometimes we feel stuck, but when we're doing what we're supposed to be doing and we're following Jesus, we're never really stuck. We're always moving forward. Even if it doesn't feel like it, and even if it doesn't seem like it's the way we want to go, we're always moving forward. So that's all I have to say, because we have to leave, because we're